A digital chime, audible only to Julian, announced a 20-point increase in affection. He stared down at the man bleeding on the polished floor of the gilded cage, the knife in his hand slick with crimson. It made no sense. This was his 7th attempt, and after 6 failures that ended in his own death at this man's hands, he had opted for a more direct approach. He had aimed for the heart. He'd missed by an inch. Silas, even in a blood-soaked shirt, was a work of art carved from marble and shadow. A scar would only add to the tragic beauty of his features. Julian raised the knife to strike again, to end the cycle for good. The blade descended, a streak of silver in the club's dim lighting. It stopped a breath away from Silas's throat as his eyes fluttered open. They were calm, devoid of fear, and fixed on Julian. A tremor ran through Julian's arm, the knife skittering across Silas's cheek and opening a shallow cut. A new alert sounded. Affection up. Julian felt a surge of pure, unadulterated frustration. He had spent 6 lifetimes trying to win this man over with kindness, with patience, with everything he had. The affection score had never climbed out of the negative integers until the moment Silas was killing him. Now, a simple act of violence had done what months of careful strategy could not. The club's proprietor, a formidable woman named Eve, finally pushed through the gawking patrons. She took in the scene and, ignoring Silas's grievous wound, grabbed him by the hair and slammed his head against the floorboards. She screeched that he was a worthless piece of trash for daring to offend Julian Vance. Silas's head struck the wood with a sickening thud, but his gaze never left Julian's, a faint, mocking smile playing on his lips. A new chime. Affection down 5 points. Then another. Down 5 more. Julian yelled for her to stop. His back was cold with sweat. He couldn't comprehend the logic. He had assumed Silas derived pleasure from pain, but the numbers were plummeting. He looked down at the man's head, now bloody and bruised, and the affection score that had dwindled back to 0. In a fit of pique, he kicked Silas hard in the ribs. Affection plus 10. Julian fell silent, a disturbing realization dawning on him. Eve, misinterpreting his silence, resumed her verbal assault, telling Silas to beg for Mr. Vance's forgiveness. Silas, looking utterly broken but with eyes as placid as a frozen lake, spoke for the first time. He softly stated that he had never met Julian Vance before and did not know how he had offended him. Then, with a self-deprecating laugh, he offered himself to Julian as a dog, a plaything for his future amusement. The next thing he knew, Julian was watching Silas sleep in the guest bed of his penthouse apartment. The city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The anemic glow did little to warm the cold, minimalist space. An electronic voice in his mind, the system, chirped excitedly about the mission's progress now that Silas had offered himself up. Julian mentally told it to shut up. He knew Silas's offer was anything but sincere. He asked the system for the current affection score. It was 0. Still, Julian noted with grim satisfaction, 0 was the highest it had ever been at this stage. He knew it wasn't personal. Silas was not impervious to kindness. He was impervious to kindness from the son of the man who had destroyed his life. Julian's father, Senator Vance, had framed the Ashworths, a family of decorated war heroes, for treason. Their name was ruined, their assets seized, their entire line obliterated in a single politically motivated stroke of a pen. Silas, the sole survivor, had been cast out, stripped of his name and legacy, and left to rot. He had been honing his hatred in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Julian was just collateral damage in his war for vengeance. A soft groan came from the bed. Silas was awake, his eyes fixed on Julian. He moved to get out of bed, his posture immediately deferential, and asked if Mr. Vance required anything. Julian scoffed at the performance. He had fallen for that harmless facade too many times. He told Silas that if he was going to be a dog, he should at least address him as master. Silas's gaze flickered up, meeting Julian's defiant stare. After a heartbeat of hesitation, he reached out, pulling Julian off balance and onto the edge of the bed. His warm breath ghosted against Julian's ear as he leaned in close, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "Master." Julian flinched as if burned, shoving him away. The sudden movement tore open the wound on Silas's chest, and fresh blood seeped through the bandages. A grimace of pain crossed Silas's face, but his eyes held a dark, triumphant glint. The system chimed. Affection +5. News of the incident spread through the city's elite circles, but Julian paid it no mind. His reputation for volatile behavior was well established. A few days later, he tossed a small wooden box at Silas. He told him to put it on. Silas had taken to the new title with an unnerving ease, calling him master with a cadence that bordered on intimate. Inside the box was a thick, brown leather collar with a polished steel ring at its center. It was a clear and deliberate insult. Julian was determined to get his money's worth of cruelty before the inevitable end. He watched for a reaction, a flash of anger or humiliation. There was none. Silas simply remarked that he was surprised his master had such interesting tastes. Affection +20. Before Julian could process the alert, Silas had fastened the collar around his own neck. The dark leather contrasted sharply with his pale skin, the taut line of his throat hinting at a wildness barely contained. He ran a finger over the steel ring and, with a thoughtful frown, produced a short, thin needle that had been cleverly concealed within its seam. He held it up, his gaze meaningful. Julian's face went pale. He swore the needle wasn't his idea. Silas said nothing, his expression unreadable. He pricked his own neck with the needle, drawing a single bead of blood, then smudged the drop onto Julian's lips. The next moment, his mouth was on Julian's, a brutal, possessive kiss that tasted of iron and rage. Julian, overwhelmed, could only grip the collar, trying to pull him back. It had no effect. Finally, he broke free and slapped Silas across the face with all his strength. A red welt bloomed on Silas's cheek. He smiled, gently taking Julian's hand and murmuring that he hoped it didn't hurt. Affection +15. Julian snatched his hand back and fled the room. At Senator Vance's annual fundraising gala, Silas's bruised face and the faint red mark on his cheek drew considerable attention. Julian's father, the senator, made a show of asking if Silas needed a doctor. Silas politely declined the offer. Julian's older brother, Liam, was less subtle, loudly questioning why Julian would bring the son of a traitor to such an event. The senator shushed Liam, a practiced performance of paternal diplomacy that Julian had witnessed his entire life. Julian ignored them both. He took a sip of bourbon from his glass and pulled Silas down to sit beside him, feeding him the rest of the drink from his own glass. Liam crushed his glass in his hand, and the senator's placid smile tightened at the edges. Under the table, Silas's fingers brushed against Julian's thigh. He whispered that he understood now. He was a shield, a tool to embarrass Julian's family. Julian warned him under his breath not to push it. Silas only leaned closer, his voice a low murmur against Julian's ear, saying a tool should be used to its full potential. Julian's gaze fell to Silas's collar, where the brown leather peeked out from under his shirt. The thought of it, a secret mark of ownership hidden in plain sight, sent a rush of heat through him. Affection plus 10. The chime startled Julian, and he fumbled his glass, spilling its contents all over Silas's shirt. Silas excused himself to change, leaving Julian to stare after him, utterly bewildered by the sudden spike in affection. Later, Julian stood by a stone creek on the estate grounds, the cool night air clearing his head. Silas appeared on the opposite bank, a silhouette against the darkness. Julian remained silent, tossing pebbles into the water. After a long moment, he asked if Silas had found what he was looking for. Silas went still. He admitted that Julian knew. Of course he knew. The club proprietor, Eve, was one of Silas's agents. The servitude was a ploy to gain access to the Vance estate, to the senator's study, where evidence exonerating his family was hidden. Silas wondered why, if Julian knew, he had helped him by creating a distraction at the gala. Before Julian could answer, a silver glint flashed through the air. An object flew from Silas's hand, whistling past Julian's ear and embedding itself in the chest of a black-clad figure who had been sneaking up behind him. More assassins emerged from the shadows. Silas vaulted across the creek, moving with a fluid deadliness that left them all dead or dying within seconds. He retrieved his weapon from the first attacker, the needle from the collar. After carefully wiping it clean, he slotted it back into its hidden compartment. He saw the look on Julian's face and smiled, saying a gift from his master should be treasured, even a murder weapon. It served as a constant reminder that the master wanted him dead. Julian called him a lunatic and kicked at him, accusing him of nearly killing him with that throw. Silas didn't move, but Julian lost his balance and tumbled backward into the icy creek. The fall brought on a fever. In his delirium, he dreamt of his childhood. He was 10 and someone had pushed him into this same creek. He was drowning, his calls for help unheard, until a boy swam desperately toward him, pulling him to shore. He could never remember the boy's face. He awoke to Silas's voice. His blurry vision slowly focused, and for a second, the face of the boy in his memory seemed to merge with the man leaning over him. Silas was trying to get him to take some medicine. Julian asked about the assassins. Silas assured him it was being handled. They both knew it was Liam's work. Julian turned his head away, refusing the medicine. He told Silas to stop the act. He had the evidence he needed. He didn't have to pretend to be a loyal dog anymore. He asked why Silas had bothered saving him, since he planned to kill him eventually anyway. Silas countered with his own question. Why had Julian helped him? For a long time, Julian said nothing. He finally managed that he was just buying some goodwill. Silas told him he was a terrible liar. He cupped Julian's face, his proximity making Julian's head spin. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. The Ashworths were patriots, and they never should have been disgraced. The change in Silas was immediate. The cold indifference in his eyes was replaced by a tidal wave of emotion. He leaned down and kissed Julian, a gentle, searching kiss that was nothing like their previous violent encounters. In his past lives, Julian had been too afraid of dying to ever truly help Silas. He had always tried to stop the revenge plot to save himself. Now, accepting his fate, he had done the right thing. The fever and the intimacy blended into a dizzying haze. When Silas began to remove Julian's clothes, he managed a weak protest that he was sick. Silas only became more aroused. He produced a thin chain from somewhere, clipped it to the ring on his collar, and placed the other end in Julian's hand. He told Julian to pull it if he couldn't take any more. He never stopped. The tighter Julian pulled the chain, the more frenzied Silas became. When Julian awoke, it was noon. Silas was gone, but the chain was still coiled on the nightstand. Julian threw it across the room in a flash of anger, nearly hitting Silas as he walked through the door. Silas calmly picked it up and offered Julian a glass of water. There was a new sincerity in his demeanor. He informed Julian that his brother, Liam, had an unfortunate drowning accident that morning. Julian stared at him, stunned by his efficiency. Then he remembered something. He asked Silas how he knew Liam had pushed him into the creek all those years ago. Silas simply smiled and said that Julian's vengeful nature was his most beautiful quality. The system announced that the affection score had reached 70%. Julian celebrated this unprecedented high, feeling a spark of triumph. He decided he would punish Silas later by making him peel sunflower seeds all night. The system reminded him that anything less than 100% was still a failure. Julian scoffed. Maybe he'd go stab him again. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Liam's mother, Mrs. Vance, dressed in mourning clothes. She burst in, screaming at Julian for not mourning his own brother. Julian laughed her off, reminding her of her own disrespect when his mother had died. She lunged at him, accusing him of murdering Liam. Julian threw her to the ground and held a blade to her throat, her never to speak ill of his mother again. The woman's expression shifted from rage to a kind of crazed glee. She told him a secret then, a whispered revelation about his mother's death that made the sword fall from his hand. Silas found him that night sitting alone in the courtyard. He covered Julian's thin shoulders with his own coat. Without a word, Julian turned and pulled Silas down onto the bench, kissing him with a desperate hunger that took Silas by surprise. When it was over, Julian lay in his arms and made a request. He asked Silas if he could spare his father. The warmth between them instantly vanished. The unspoken truth of their blood feud had finally been brought into the light, creating a chasm between them. Silas laughed, a bitter, broken sound. He had thought they were the same kind of person. He addressed Julian coolly as Mr. Vance, and then he was gone. Silas returned to the gilded cage. Julian watched him from a distance, seeing the leather collar was gone from his neck. He beat up a few thugs for bad-mouthing Silas, but knew it was a pointless gesture. He told the system to stop reporting the affection score. He didn't care anymore. He was going home to the Vance estate. His father, now without his favored heir, was surprisingly welcoming. One day, the senator brought up Silas, his suspicion about Liam's death clear. He suggested Julian buy Silas back from the club and bring him to the estate as a servant, a gesture of magnanimity. Julian refused, stating bluntly that Silas was too filthy and stubborn to be a servant. His father grew angry and ordered him to do it. When Julian found Silas at the club, the man was cold and distant. He refused to even look at Julian. Julian explained that his father suspected him in Liam's death and wanted him brought to the estate. Silas sneered, asking why Julian was him after asking him to spare the senator's life. Julian's temper flared, but then he faltered, realizing his dismissive words to his father had been overheard. He admitted he had said those things only to discourage his father from the idea. He insisted Silas knew what he'd really meant. Silas was unmoved. As Julian tried to argue, Silas simply turned and walked away. The day of the senator's birthday, Julian found his father's study guarded. He was told the senator was meeting with an important guest. Julian made a scene and the door opened. The governor himself walked out. Julian immediately fell to his knees and begged for the Ashworth case to be reopened. His father, furious, ordered the guards to give him 30 lashes. The whip, dipped in salt water, tore into his back. Through the agony, he kept repeating his plea. The governor watched, impassive, until he finally broke a teacup and ordered the punishment to continue. Just as the whip was about to fall again, Silas burst in, shielding Julian's body with his own and taking the blow. He knelt beside Julian, claiming he was there only out of loyalty to his former master, and offered to take the rest of the punishment. The governor's son, standing beside his father, noted that such loyalty was admirable and suggested they allow it. The whipping continued, with Silas enduring it all in stoic silence. Later, as a servant clumsily tended to his wounds, Julian was still reeling. Silas climbed in through the window, his own back a mess of raw flesh. His face was a mask of fury. He knew Julian had planned the entire confrontation. The plea to reopen the case was a pretext. It was a suicidal, desperate gamble to arrange a meeting between Silas and the governor's son, who was looking for allies to usurp his father. Silas demanded to know if Julian had ever considered that he might not have shown up. Julian looked into his eyes and confessed that the possibility had never occurred to him. He then kissed him. After the kiss, Julian put his hand on Silas's neck, his fingers tracing the faint outline where the collar had been. To his surprise, it was back. Silas knelt by the bed, resting his chin on the mattress so Julian could touch it. Julian asked again if he would spare his father. Not a deal, he clarified. A request. After a long, tense silence, Silas agreed. Events moved swiftly after that. The Ashworth case was officially reopened. Panicked, the senator set the estate ablaze and tried to flee, only to be stopped by Silas, his sword at the old man's throat. Julian ran out and reminded Silas of his promise. Silas relented, turning away. The senator, relieved, thanked Julian for saving him. Julian smiled. He led his father through the burning estate to the small family shrine. He told him it was his mother's memorial day, and he should pay his respects one last time. As his father turned to leave, impatient, Julian ran him through with a sword. He informed his dying father that he only asked Silas not to kill him. He never said that he wouldn't. He knew the senator had arranged his own wife's death. Mrs. Vance appeared, witnessing the patricide, and began to laugh hysterically. Just then, Silas returned with several associates. He announced to them all that Senator Vance had died from a poison he had administered, and that Julian had merely been trying to bleed him to save his life. The associates all nodded in agreement. Silas explained that the old governor had died of a sudden illness that day, and the heir was now in charge. He told Julian he had poisoned the senator when he'd feigned submission earlier. He could not break his promise, but he also could not let his family's murderer live. And he would not allow Julian to bear the crime of patricide. In the smoldering ruins of the shrine, Silas leaned in. "We are the same kind of person, after all," he whispered. Julian shoved him away, calling him a depraved animal, but Silas only pressed closer. Weeks later, Julian, now the new head of the Vance family by the new governor's decree, flicked a riding crop against Silas's bare chest. He demanded to know what deal Silas had struck with the new governor. Silas explained his arrangement. He helped the new governor ascend, and in return, the Ashworth name was cleared and the Vance estate and all its holdings, including Julian, were given to his sole discretion. Julian felt a pang of unease, as if the new governor's interest in Silas was more than political. Silas must have seen it in his eyes, because he suddenly pulled Julian down on top of him. He asked if his master was jealous. Before Julian could curse him, Silas confessed the last part of his request to the new governor, a decree stating that he, Silas Ashworth, would be permitted to serve as a dog to only one master for the rest of his life. Julian Vance. Julian stared at him, utterly speechless at the man's beautiful, magnificent insanity. He was about to tell him to stop being a dog and just be a man, when a final, triumphant chime echoed in his mind. "Congratulations, host. Affection at maximum. Mission successful."